I was there for 12 years, even in my younger days, and I'm still trying to look young, you know. But women, I celebrate you. You know, keep doing what you know how to do, lifting your head high. And I know with what is going on in the Senate, you say, why am I not taking a position? But I believe that Senate is doing what is needful, because that's what it is. It's an inside place, and it's a matured chambers. We shouldn't be hearing things like that. It's a matured chamber, and it should be treated with respect. It's an honor for you to be in that place alone. I was there for 12 years, even in my younger days, and I'm still trying to look young, you know. But people compliment you all the time. Only that, just put your place in yourself. Women, raise yourself high. Don't be in a position that men will be talking to you. You can always shut them down before they start. So all the very best. Keep doing your best. Happy International Women's Day.
Yesterday, we had the Senate violate a court order because they wanted to nail Senator Natasha Akpoti. Yesterday, we saw a Senate Ethics Committee that didn't hear from the side of the dramatis personae and all of this drama, but went ahead to make its conclusion based on other people they spoke to without the dramatis personae being there. And he reached a verdict of suspension.
Remi Tinubu could support bad thing. There's never a time in Nigeria Remi Tinubu can support good thing. There was a time Remi Tinubu was fighting Melai. Yeah. They fought dirty. But it wasn't on sexual harassment. I don't really understand. Sexual harassment is a different issue in our society today. Could be that Natasha, Akpabio, both are senators in the United States. Both of them could have stepped down now. Yeah. And they allow the congressmen to investigate them properly. And after investigation, we have cameras all over the United States. There must be a substantiated evidence that we use to what? Punish Akpabio. Akpabio should be, you know, down right now on his knee begging. But there is no equipment, no forensic investigation, you know, institution or establishment in Nigeria. We just investigate out of human ability and knowledge, which can never be complete. But America, they have technologies, science, yes, equipment down to investigate you. Failure to do that, intelligence, artificial intelligence will capture you where you committed the dastard act. Artificial intelligence is there to actually tell you you are wrong, man. So what is happening is that our society here in Nigeria is not advanced. We don't run an advanced society in Nigeria here. So that's why we can never get it right.
The travails of Senator Natasha Akpoti started with "These are outbursts" as she refused to relocate to a new seat a fortnight ago. On Thursday, Senate slams a suspension order on her for misconduct.
That the Senate do suspend Senator Natasha Akpoti for 6 months for a total violation of the Senate Standing Rules 2023 as amended, for bringing the presiding officer and the entire Nigerian Senate in general to public opprobrium. Those in support of prayer one say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
The hammer fell on Akpoti Uduaghan after the Senate disciplinary panel indicted her and recommended that she should be suspended for 6 months.
That the Senate do suspend Senator Natasha Akpoti Uduaghan with effect from 6 March 2025 from all legislative activities forthwith.
The Senate adopted the reports of its disciplinary committee that had earlier accused Akpoti Uduaghan of trying to stop it from carrying out its assignment. The upper chamber went further to bar her from coming anywhere near the National Assembly. Her office is to be locked and her salaries and allowances withheld for the period she's to stay away.
For the period of her suspension, she'll be barred from representing herself to the public, locally and internationally, as a Senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Akpoti Uduaghan sat on a seat, occasionally smiling as Senate decides her fate. Earlier, the Chief Whip, Mohammed Mongunu, in a point of order, drew attention to Akpoti Uduaghan's consistent refusal to to stand up to observe the entry of the Senate President, an act she repeated on Thursday.
It was in the media. All the media yesterday reported that when the Senate President is entering, she didn't observe that rule. And today also, she didn't observe that rule.
Not satisfied with how a sexual harassment petition against the President of the Senate, Akpabio, was tossed out on Wednesday, Akpoti Uduaghan resubmitted it on Thursday. But it was an exercise in futility. The Senate disciplinary panel had nailed her, and the petition would now count for nothing. Not one of the senators, including those in our caucus from Kogi State, rose in our defense.
Mr. President, I'm one of those that put you in this problem, and I'm very sorry. When my sister came to the Senate, you were very reluctant, giving her a leadership position. I want to recall your word. You said she's a rookie. And there are people that came before her. Remi, why would I give her chairmanship position? You said you wouldn't do that. That your conscience will not allow you to do that. I went to some leaders here to put pressure on you.
The closest to sympathy she got was a plea from the minority leader, Senator Abamoro, asking the Senate to reduce the suspension to 3 months.
I say this with all with all sense of responsibility. But I think that with what has been canvassed here and the unanimity of senators on the gravity of these incidents, on the integrity of this institution, that 3 months is sufficient for some level of restitution.
Abamoro's appeal was flatly rejected in the face of fierce opposition by senators, including those from our People's Democratic Party, PDP, calling on the Senate to unleash its powers on her to serve as a deterrent.
The past 2 weeks, the integrity has gone down just because of mere trivial matter of allocating seat and so on. We don't want to know what is undercurrent. God so kind, those people who push you to assist, they have confessed. And I have prayed for him that may God forgive him and Jubril.
Even the plea not to withdraw her security details was equally thrown out. Natasha Akpoti Uduaghan could, however, get a reprieve and return to the Senate much earlier if she apologizes in a written letter to the leadership of the Senate. But as Sergeant-at-Arms closed in on her to effect the suspension order, Akpoti Uduaghan had this parting word for Akpabio and the rest of the Senate.
This injustice will not be sustained. The pursuit for justice.
Sensing that a microphone had been turned off, she stormed out, closely marked by the Sergeant-at-Arms, who escorted her to a waiting vehicle. Omo Bazwai, Arise News.
Right. I don't know if we would say that this sums up the case that we've been following in the last few weeks or just begins a new setup. But of course, you've seen the main report, as Omo has said, that Senator Natasha Akpoti Uduaghan has been given a 6-month suspension as recommended by the Senate Ethics Committee. Your take on this story, Rufai?
Yesterday, democracy went on holiday. Travesty replaced it. That's what happened yesterday. Yesterday, an institution that is supposed to stand tall was at its lowest ebb. Yesterday, we had the Senate violate a court order because they wanted to nail Senator Natasha Akpoti. Yesterday, we saw a Senate Ethics Committee that didn't hear from the side of the dramatis personae and all of this drama, but went ahead to make its conclusion based on other people they spoke to without the dramatis personae being there. And he reached a verdict of suspension. Yesterday, we saw a Senate that tried to sidestep a very important issue as regards the sexual harassment case raised against the Senate President, Senator Akpabio. Yesterday, we saw high-handedness, political brigandage. Yesterday, I wept for my democracy. The same democracy patriots like MK Abiola fought for and laid their lives for. But I hope at some point, Nigerians will rise up and will weep no more. Anyway, there's a background to all of this. All we are saying, let investigations be held as regards the sexual harassment case. We saw the ethics committee that made its deposition, but what the ethics committee failed to realize from the video we all watched, that there was actually an altercation. It wasn't just only Natasha, Senator Natasha Akpoti, speaking to the Senate president. He spoke back. He even threatened suspension while the altercation was going on. So it wasn't mute every step of the way. But obviously, if you want to call somebody a bad name and bury him, you look for ways to do that quickly. Anyway, what's the historical antecedents? The people that have been suspended by the Senate that went to court, the court overturned those suspensions, and the Senate did not pursue those cases any longer. Ombakige comes to mind. Ndume comes to mind. The Senate, too, will have to tell us why, despite a court injunction saying, let's stop the process, they went ahead to still do a process that they brought forward just to be able to nail Senator Natasha Akpoti. Like she says, this injustice will not be sustained. Definitely the fight is on, but I weep for Nigeria.
Okay, I think the more serious issues, in my view, will seem to be that, look, there are substantive issues that we can talk about. Yesterday, we had two persons here, Kingdom Okere and Maxwell Opara, both lawyers. While I was giving a summary of their submissions, I said both of them are dealt largely with the procedural and adjectival issues within the province of law in this particular case. It will appear that the Senate of the Federal Republic, the Committee on Public Petitions, Ethics and Privileges, has taken the technical procedural route to say that if you are a member of an organization, an institution, you are bound by the rules of that organization. There are certain things you are not allowed to do, and no one individual can be greater than the institution, because the sum of the integrity of that institution is the collective commitment of the members to those principles guiding that institution. And it was in that regard, as I said, in many respects, Senator Akpoti Uduaghan would seem to have violated some rules of, power, some laws of power, as defined in 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. But that's not the big issue here. The big issue is that I hope the parties involved will learn their lessons. If you look at the declaration by the Senate committee, very high-handed. She's not to be seen anywhere near the Senate premises. In fact, the only thing they didn't do was that they didn't define the radius to say, we must not see you within this radius around the National Assembly. Our aides would not, enjoy any privileges. She herself will have a security persons involved. She will be on suspension for 6 months. 6 months by their calendar. Half of the time they are sleeping. Half of the time they are on recess. That will be like 1 year. So what does that say about our official function as the representative of the people of Kogi Central, who are the ones who are going to suffer at the end of the day because of this emphasis on drama, on theater, on salacious, representations to the Nigerian public. Now, beyond that also, we had members of even that Senate laughing at her. The two persons sitting next to her, as she was packing her things, they put off her microphone, they laughed at her. She said that this injustice will not be sustainable. Okay, that remains to be seen. And this will raise questions about, how the Senate goes about its business. But beyond all those details, all the melodramatic things that people will say in that regard, either about what the law says or about what the procedure has been, will be key issues, fundamental issues that have come up. One, about misogyny. I think there's something we teach students when we teach tragedy and other tragic forms. That was the title of the course in those days. Is that a tragic hero can win in losing. And I think that in the case of Akpabio Uduaghan senator, if you can describe her as a tragic hero, not a villain, she may have won in certain regards in foregrounding certain basic issues about misogyny in our system, about women representation in politics, about also sexual harassment, whether it has improved or not, that has been thrown out into the public domain. The plight of women in politics, all of these issues will be debated, even by persons who do not know the truth, who do not have the details, and who do not have, what it takes to even do the analysis. Finally, I think that beyond all of this drama, whatever they decide at the end of the day, whether they take Senator Ojiu's or Kalu's suggestion that there should be empathy and that if she apologizes, she should be forgiven, I think, well, if she apologizes, that will amount to utter humiliation. But that's up to her, if she apologizes or not. Is to restore confidence in that National Assembly. We cannot afford to have a National Assembly that is dedicated to consideration of frivolities and impurities. The public today, my own assessment, I may be wrong, will seem to be losing confidence in the National Assembly. If they are not saying one man wants to fight at a sex toy shop, it will be that, some people are constituting themselves into comedians, or there is unending melodrama, or it is that some women are, using too much pancake. This is supposed to be a very serious institution. We need to remind ourselves. And the members of that assembly need to restore confidence in that assembly. We want to hear debates, as Mr. Peter Obi has argued, about serious issues of governance that will move this country forward. Not issues about this woman is seductive, this one has 4 wives, I slept in Obajanas cement factory. Is that place a hotel? Look, all these things, they are just basic distractions. And I think that the members of the National Assembly, both the Red Chamber and the Green Chamber, should be well advised to conduct themselves as serious-minded people. I don't like sitting down here, discussing frivolities, discussing fluffy stuff.
All right. Yeah, it's been a very interesting past few days. But now we've seen what seems to be a conclusion, but I believe that it's just the beginning of something new. And I think very appropriately said that the Senate as an institution is under the eyes or the radar of a lot of Nigerians, especially with regards to confidence and trust in the institution to be taken seriously. Yesterday, like I said, would have proven an opportunity for the Senate to at least begin to build the confidence in people that it is an institution that follows due process and respects the rule of law. Unfortunately, in many instances or in many things that happened yesterday, they've eroded further the trust of people in the institution. Number one was the way the procedure was done. We had talked about this at length yesterday, even with our guests, around the implications of having a court order to stop the proceedings, at least in the interim, and how that was ignored. We talked about the fact that Senator Natasha Akpabio Uduaghan, in respect of that court order, refused to present herself to the committee, and despite that, the process seemed to have been expedited, and the committee found her guilty on all counts. Number three was that she was seated in the chambers yesterday. And we saw yesterday, for those who watched the live proceedings, which was aired yesterday on Arise TV, we saw how each of the different senators, all men, I must say, were recognized in the House, in the chambers, and were allowed to speak. But she wasn't recognized, and she wasn't allowed to defend herself. So even if she didn't go to the Senate committee, appear before the Senate committee, that was an opportunity for Nigerians to see that at least she was giving a voice in the matter. You cannot be judged or brought before a panel and your voice is not heard at all to consider, even if it's just for the optics. Now, talking about optics, something else that a number of people challenged was the fact that the Senate president, who is a principal actor in all of this, was the judge and jury in his own case. He was the one who presided, despite the calls by notable Nigerians that in the way that the president of the 8th Assembly had done to recuse himself, even if it's just for the optics. And this is why, for some people, it seemed like almost a disregard of the voices of the Nigerian people. And haven't we seen that a number of times when processes happen, not just at the National Assembly, but even in the State House of Assembly? Remember, I talked about how in Lagos State, the people were just onlookers and just viewers as the shows played out without the consideration of the constituents that they sit there on the mandate on which they sit in the chambers to represent. So that was quite unfortunate. But what I would say is that as we continue to take on this matter, is that I keep emphasizing the fact that when it comes to women, now we have one less woman out of the 4 women in the Senate, at least if the suspension goes through. It means we now have only 3 voices of women in the House, in the chambers. Second of all is that the Kogi Central voices has been silenced. And then we then talk about the legality of that, especially citing the case of Omar Agege, where the court ruled that even if the Senate was meant to suspend, they cannot suspend beyond 14 days. That's another thing that would be looked into in terms of the legality of that pronounced suspension. The final thing I would say is that, yes, people might say that, oh, she lost yesterday, that's Senator Akpabio, but sometimes you lose the battle to win the war. And I believe that this has opened a conversation afresh of women in politics, of gender equity in Nigeria, of how women are perceived. And sometimes when we look at a situation like that, she spoke up for a lot of girls and women who could identify with her story, who didn't even have the opportunity to have a voice when this similar incident or allegations were made, where you're asked to keep quiet or you're victimized because of your position or your stance on a particular matter. So I do believe that this has just opened broader conversation with the Senate. If this matter had been handled better, would have been able to stall or at least restore the confidence of Nigerians in the institution. Well, we end today's news segment on a sad note, as we sadly announce the death of Dr. Doyin Okupe. Okupe served Special Assistant on Media and Publicity to President Olusegun Obasanjo and Senior Special Assistant on Public Affairs to President Goodluck Jonathan. He was also the former Director General of the Peter Obi 2023 Presidential Campaign Organization. Dr. Doyin Okupe died at the age of 72. So such sad news there, and we pray that he will rest in peace and that his family are comforted at this time. A number of things could be said about this man who, in his own way, made a mark in the political history of Nigeria. I don't know if you have anything to say, Dr. Bati Rufai?
I mean, I would just like to respect the wishes of his family at this point in time and just wish them well. It's a very tough time for them. What else can I say? I mean, we know what Doyin Okupe stood for. He had his convictions. He believed in the things he believed in. Most importantly, he always believed Nigeria could be a better place than what we have today. And he never shied away, from talking about very key national issues. I come from a very prestigious, long line from the Agbomagbe line, and he's impacted the country, served with the APC, got out to the Labour Party at some point. I mean, served with the PDP, then beg your pardon, then got out to the Labour Party at some point. And now he pretty much supported President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in his last days. But he was always an interviewer's delight. He would come, sit on this, around this table, have conversations with us about the country. He had his convictions, and win or lose, what he stood for. And he was a man, of his convictions. We wish him, we wish the family, God's grace at this time. I have not much to say, but I also want to wait for the family to release an official statement, to that effect, just to also respect their privacy at this point.
All right. Thank you. Dr. Basi, would you like to say anything?
Okay. My commiserations to the Okupe family, a very distinguished family. The scion of that family established the Agbomagbe Bank that later became the Wema Bank, that is very well known today. So he comes from that line of illustrious persons. He was also a prince of Iperu Remo, when Kabiyesi, the Alakperu of Iperu, died recently. I was even